All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday, June 19th, 2025. AU Undercover, Ronnie Sanders in Birmingham. He does have power. Oakley McFerrin, our intern up in Nashville, he does have power. And executive producer Brendan Martin in Ocala, he has all the power. He is the producer. So Kevin Scarbinsky out today. He has no power. Doug Dean has a meeting of the top brains in the state of Alabama. It'll be quick and to the point. Guys, there's a lot happening in college football world right now. I was talking to Buddy Martin yesterday. He made a great point. He said, everybody's talking about portal and NIL and all. We know it's there. We're going to work through it. This is merely a correction in the market. Let's talk Auburn Tiger football. Week 2, we want to preview Ball State. So I've got my preview ready. Auburn plays Ball State September 6th at 6:30 p.m. Central. So anyway, we're done with the preview of Ball State, but it's a short one. They're from Muncie, Indiana, and their nickname is the Cardinals. Famous alum, David Letterman, former host of Late Night with David Letterman and Paul Schaefer in the Late Night Band. But it's going to be an opponent. It's after the Baylor game, and then South Alabama at Oklahoma at Texas A&M. It's really strange watching Auburn now because the first 5 games, you're at Baylor, you're at Oklahoma, you're at Texas A&M. It's like Auburn's in the Big 12, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's we've talked about it before. I'm still trying to get used to South Carolina and Arkansas, I think.
Yeah.
It's the conference has certainly changed with Missouri and A&M and now Texas and Oklahoma, and great additions. But it's a different world in college football. I mean, you got 16 teams in the conference, and when I was growing up, I think there were 10. So
yeah. Oakley, you've grown up. You don't know anything different. South Carolina and Arkansas in the league, Missouri, Texas A&M, and now Texas OU. Looking at Auburn, is there anything about Ball State that keeps you up at night, grinding your teeth, pulling your hair, pacing the floor? Before you give us your thoughts on a quick little, couple of minutes on your transfer portal theory that could be a remedy for what ails college football.
There's nothing keeping me up about Ball State, but I do think that'll be an exciting game for the Auburn fan base. That'll probably be our first live action at Deuce Night. You've heard a lot about Sam Turner and Duke Smith. So, I mean, we've got a few exciting freshmen I think people are excited to see, and that'll be a good opportunity in the first game. They will probably, if we handle business, don't pull in New Mexico State, then we'll be able to have the opportunity to see them.
Yeah, I should remember the New Mexico State, the Aggies. Oakley, you gave me a great idea on the portal, and the world is ready. They have pen and paper handy.
Well, you mentioned how the portal, you should have one free portal entry, and then after that, wait a year. But I think there's a big difference, and there's a right way to use the portal. So an example would be, say somebody goes to Auburn, can't crack the rotation, then transfers down to Troy. Then he should have the opportunity to transfer back up after 1 or 2 years, without having to sit out a year. I think where we get the portal gets kind of messy is when a guy goes from Auburn to Ole Miss to Georgia Tech, then to UCLA. That's where I think people get tired of the portal, and that's where the portal fatigue kind of comes out.
Okay. Ronnie?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of things you can do. Limiting the number of transfers. I think, there's the issue with the portal is, and Coach Saban has said this over and over and over again. The more you transfer, the less likely you are to graduate. And for student athletes, if you're really a student athlete, you're not transferring 4 times. And so, I think that's number one, recruiting the right type of kid. And the other thing is, like you said, Oakley, using the portal in the right way, adding pieces, still recruiting high school kids, building your roster that way. But you got to recruit the right kind of kids, the kids that want to be at your school, the kids that buy into your coaching staff, that buy into the school, that buy into the culture, and they want to be there. And then if you fill some holes with transfers, that's great. But if you live off the portal, then you end up looking like Florida State sometimes.
And Florida State has not recovered from the hissy fit they threw when they didn't make the playoffs. Mike Norvell should have nipped that in the bud. 31 guys quit, and Georgia beat them 63-3 or something like that. I don't see them being much. They'll be a little better this year, but I don't think much better. All right, here's another one. Oakley, you also said something about NIL. You're in school at Auburn. I'm going to ask you this question I'm being serious. How often do you see the student athletes in class at Auburn?
I mean, I had a few classes with a few of the student athletes, more of the underclassmen. I think once you get a little bigger and you're starting, you're kind of well known around campus, you probably are doing online classes, so you don't really get the opportunity. Like, I don't see a single basketball player in any class this year, which is understandable because number one team in the nation, they'd probably be getting swarmed. So, I mean, you don't really see them too much around, which is kind of a shame, but I understand the reasoning for it.
Is that, something that happened during the virus, the pandemic, that, at some point, all those things have got to be put in the wood chipper. It's like, get your ass to class. You're a student athlete. Hey, I was in Auburn. Bo Jackson was there. Now, that's like Elvis walking down the concourse, when we were there. And it was just normal. He was a regular. I had lots of classes with student athletes, and I used to go over to Sewell Hall, the old athletic dorm, and study with them. So it's interesting. All right, I got to ask. That's
when
weird.
When I was in school, part of my job was we get paid to go check classes, and so for every hour we checked, I think it was $5 we got or whatever it was. Yeah. And so we'd go around and check classes. Now, a lot of times they were there, and a lot of times they weren't. They were there more often than not. But a lot of times they'd see me check, and then out the door they went as soon as I checked.
Really?
So they're you want to hold guys accountable, and you want them to go to class, and there are certain ways you can do that. And so checking classes is one of those.
Yeah, and I had a lot of them, and the teachers that I had, they were very like, don't come to me begging to pass to stay eligible, because we had to deal with Prop 48 back then too. All right, so I want to ask. I'll start with you, Ronnie, and then Oakley. I'm just this is interesting to me. If you look at Auburn the last couple of years, the number of close losses, what's the two worst losses are the LSU game in 23 in Baton Rouge and the New Mexico State game in 23. Been a lot of close losses. And Ronnie, is it just a big deal to think Auburn can win 10 plus games this year with this improved roster?
I don't expect them to win 10, and I don't think that's where the expectations ought to be. I think, expecting maybe 9. I think that may be realistic, but here's the thing. Auburn has really good players for the first time. And, the roster is better than it's been in quite a while, certainly up front. Can Auburn win 10 games? Yeah, I think so. But it's going to take everybody buying in, being on the same page, and it's going to take the coaching staff doing some things that they haven't done the last 2 years. And certainly, and I'm not even talking about Potato Man and Malzahn.
Yeah.
So, there were some things that happened the last couple of years under Hugh Freeze that he admittedly, and he said that, I should do this. I should have done this differently. I should have done that differently. Or, the defense coordinator should have done this differently. But one thing that really stood out to me, I was talking to, and we've talked about this before. I was talking to a very prominent defense coordinator in the conference not too long ago, and he was talking about Freeze, and he's like, his preference is just to throw the ball. So his go-to is throw the ball. His default is throw the ball, not run it. And so he has to get a better handle on the third and short, hand the ball off, and play Auburn football, so to speak.
Oakley, Jackson Arnold is coming in. I think Cole Kubelik made a good point last week talking at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. He's got to be rewired after a redshirt year, and then he played some, and then he was the starter for the first few games last year. Then he lost it at halftime and gave it up to Michael Hawkins, a legacy player. He was the number 4 quarterback in the country, number 10 overall player, and the highest rated offensive recruit in Oklahoma history. What do you expect from him?
Well, it's a hard situation because the talent is there with Jackson Arnold. I think the biggest thing they've tried to work on this offseason is building his confidence back up, which Hugh Freeze talked about a little bit. And he was in there's two sides to it. He was in a very bad situation within the first 3 games. Top 5 receivers went out, bad offensive line. But then he's also going from an RPO system to another RPO system. So there's a lot of question marks around him. And I think getting off to a hot start, and especially in that Baylor game, and him having a good game will set the tone for the rest of the season. And I think that game will determine how our season goes, and maybe if we can get up to 9 to 10 wins. I think the Baylor game is a must-win in my eyes.
And Ronnie, that game, Baylor, Friday night, it's August 29th, or I'm sorry, it's 29th.
August 29th.
August 20th, yeah. So you go out there, Eric Singleton at one wide position. On the other end, it's going to be Cam Coleman. In all likelihood, you can't double team them both. Okay, Singleton is on some All SEC preseason teams, and he's on some preseason All-Star teams already that Cam Coleman is not. From what you know, Singleton, he came from the Auburn AAA farm team in Atlanta, Georgia Tech. That's kind of what's happening. And you just made a good point, Oakley. A guy goes down from Auburn to Troy, bounces back up a couple of years later. I mean, that's like Major League Baseball, you know? They send you down to AAA or AA to rehab an injury. But, Ronnie, kind of expand on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, we talked about earlier, Auburn has better players than they've had in quite a while from a roster stocking standpoint. You know, and you want to stack class on top of class on top of class.
Yeah.
And that's how you win championships. And so, you know, I agree with you. If you've got guys like that are really fast and they're physical, and then you have guys behind them, it can get really, really difficult to defend them, especially if you got a good running back.
Oakley, you played in high school at MBA in Nashville, the Gentleman Scholars. You know, Marcel Reed was your quarterback. How much fun was it to play with him? And in high school, this is an unfair comparison, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to ask it. How was he in the pocket when he had to pass deep and all like that? Because athletically, I mean, he is freakishly athletic.
Yeah, I mean, he's got one of the best arms I've seen in person. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys had unreal arms in high school, but just his ability to not only pass in the pocket, but once he got outside, his ability to extend plays, which is what we talk about with all these upcoming quarterbacks, their ability to extend the plays and make something that really might not have been there, but you buy 5 more seconds, your receiver's going to get open. So, I mean, I think he's got a lot of untapped potential that he can tap into this year, and they added 2 or 3 wide receiver weapons for him. So, I mean, I think A&M will foster a great team, and that'll be one of our key games, I think. At A&M and at Oklahoma are also 2 big games. I think we need to win one of those 2 to kind of feel good going in after our bye week.
So, Ronnie, magic number coming out of September, you want to be at least 4-1?
You know, I would think so. You want to have some momentum going into the rest of the season. And look, you know, you've got Georgia and Alabama at home. Those are really, really big games, and Auburn needs to start winning some of those. Especially, you know, you look at the Iron Bowl and the last 2 losses at Jordan-Hare, it's been brutal. You know, the overtime game, and then 4th and 31. So, you know, and both those Auburn teams, granted, played way above their heads, but that tends to happen at Jordan-Hare Stadium, certainly against Alabama. You know, if you look around, I mean, Nick Saban saying the place is haunted. There was a quote 2 years ago, and one of Alabama's players, I forget who he was now, but he was talking about his teammates told him that he was a freshman. His teammates told him that Jordan-Hare gives Auburn's players superpowers, and so there's a I don't want to say a fear, but there's a little bit of fear. If you look back over the past, and maybe forever, but Auburn's beaten Alabama more than anybody else from a, if you look at win percentage and those things. I mean, certainly in my lifetime, even Alabama being as good as they've been since Nick Saban was there, Auburn still won its, I don't want to say won its share, but won more than most other programs.
I mean, just to put it in perspective, in this millennium, since the year 2000, for those of you in, Clewiston, Auburn's 11-14 in this century against Alabama. And there have been some close losses. I mean, Gravedigger, 2021. Again, that one keeps me up at night, because if Auburn had won in 2021, would that have given Brian Harsin more time? Man. But I will never be okay with losing the Iron Bowl. But I just think that, but Auburn against Georgia in this millennium, 7-18, 8 straight losses to Georgia. Last win in Athens, 2005. If you look at the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 80s, 90s, Auburn won every one of those decades. 2000, they were 4-6. Seems like when Mark Richt came to Georgia, everything changed. Big way in recruiting, at least.
Well, there's no question in recruiting, but if you look back, I mean, Philip Marshall and I on Auburn Undercover we reported for years, hey, look, Auburn's falling behind facilities wise. Everybody's not on the same page. Stephen Leith as president was a disaster. Alan Green as AD was a disaster. Brian Harsin was a disaster as a head football coach.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of those things are Auburn's own fault. And, now that I think there's more alignment now at Auburn than there's been since Dye was the head coach. Everybody seems to be on the same page, pulling in the same direction. And that's really, really important. So, the Alabama game, the Georgia game, those are really, really important games to Auburn and Auburn fans. And so it's time for Auburn to start winning more of those games, and certainly against Georgia. The Alabama situation is Auburn seems to have no fear where that in that rivalry.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about what win totals Hugh Freeze have to get in order to not be on the hot seat, but it doesn't really matter if you don't win one of those two games, because if he doesn't win one this year, the next year, what are we going to win one on the road? It's just, he's got to win one of those two games. You've got them both at home. They don't have the best rosters that they've had in the last decade. I mean, this is the year you could win one and possibly two at both of those games. So I think it's of the utmost important to win a game this year.
Well, Rob, you brought up if Harsin wins the double overtime game
quadruple
overtime game and Jordan-Hare, does it get him more time? It probably fosters a little bit more goodwill, and maybe he understands the rivalry a little bit better. But does it buy him more time? I doubt it. It wasn't just wins and losses, because he was only in his second year.
Yeah,
middle of his second year. It was everything. It was nothing in the building worked properly. Recruiting was a disaster. It seemed that he didn't even want to try. One of the coaches, he's out, they're in a meeting one day and said, hey, coach, we're not using all of our camp days. We need to use these we got more camp days we can use. We want to, we need to get kids in here and evaluate them. I'm not worried about recruiting. We'll out-coach people in this league.
Yeah. And
so if that's your attitude, and, you look at the players that he left versus what the roster looks like now. I mean, look, I've talked to people around the program. I've talked to people in the building. And one person in particular told me, he's like, when we got here, there was not one thing that worked right in the building. And that says something. And it was obvious. So does it buy him more time? I doubt it.
Yeah. Will Muschamp told two Auburn boosters that I know that have been long generational givers to Auburn. He said, I've coached 3 different times at Auburn. And he said, we could not run into Auburn coaches going to see a recruit coming in and out of their house or coming in and out of their high school where are they? Were they abducted by aliens? That's how bad it was when Will Muschamp says that. Oh, you've got friends that go to Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, whatever. You're, going to be a sophomore at Auburn. How big in the students, you can't leave early or you'll lose your block seating in the fraternity, which is a very smart thing. My deal, if you expect the team to play a full 60, you got to stay the full 60. How excited are y'all about what Hugh Freeze is doing? Do y'all connect with him? Do y'all see him around campus? And that's what I keep asking about these players. We went to class with them, man. They used to come to the fraternity house and hang out with us. I mean, Jarquez Hunter spent a lot of time over at the Sigma Nu house, man. That's why I call him Cowboy. But they know him, and Jarquez, he is from the country. I mean, if that guy had it his way, he'd probably be doing PBR 8.5. That's Wilson's favorite show growing up, by the way.
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
That's right. Yeah. But Oakley, let's talk about it. Y'all, the student body connection to Hugh Freeze and this team, because you're not seeing them in class every day. How close are y'all compared to, say, you growing up with Cam Newton and people like that?
Well, I would say you don't see Hugh Freeze as much as you see a guy like Bruce Pearl, and I think that's why so many people are bought into the basketball team. You see Bruce, you can't miss Bruce Pearl if you come to Auburn. You just can't do it. He's everywhere. Like, I'm sitting outside of Moe's after they won the Kentucky game in 2022, and he is coming, giving a speech to the 30 people sitting outside of Moe's. It's just, I think that's something you need to see more out of the football team, especially if you're not producing wins. And I think there's a cautious optimism around Auburn football this year. I think for me, it's more of with quarterback play, I'll kind of believe it when I see it. And I think that's fair. And I mean, I think we'll know early. We'll know week one how good our team is.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, when Bruce Pearl was at Moe's, did he say, "Welcome to Moe's"? Wait, Moe's Barbecue or Moe's Mexican Grill or whatever?
Moe's Barbecue.
Yes, with the 50-cent wings on Monday night. And you'll see like 500 students in there. You're going, obviously you don't have class tomorrow. So, that's thinking about that. Ronnie, it's also different too. You got condos selling for $1.2 million at Toomer's Corner now. It's a different world. But what about you? You're Mr. AU Undercover, y'all staff, you, Jason, Phillip, everybody, y'all are the tip of the spear with Auburn. How much contact do y'all have with Hugh Freeze and any of that staff?
Well, obviously you have contact, with the staff. Freeze is available if we at different points. Certainly more available than Brian Harsin, and more available than frankly Gus Malzahn. So, he fits. Strange as that sounds, the way that he left Ole Miss, he does fit. He fits the culture. It matters to him. He seems to care about the place. I believe both of his. He's got 2 kids, I think, that three that went to Auburn, I believe. And so he gets the place, and he's been around well before he was the coach. So I think it's important to him to win, but I think it's also important to him that he represents Auburn in the right way. And that's important to Auburn people. And that will make you go, that gets you a lot longer. If you care about the place, it typically gets you a lot further than if you act like Brian Harsin.
Yeah. So looking in this 2025 season coming up, again, here's the Lindy's preview. There's Cam Coleman out of Phoenix City Central. I'm gonna start with you, Oakley, because you're really good, and Ronnie is too. Ronnie worked on the staff with Terry Bowden, was a GA for Nick Saban at LSU, worked with the Zucker, Ron Zook at Florida, was at Southern Miss, Harvard. Where else?
Not Harvard.
But all right. Oh, you study this stuff though. You, like Ronnie does, and I do, and Brendan. You look at this Auburn team. Okay, Jarquez was the man last year, but wasn't used as much as I would have liked to have seen him used. You got Damari Austin, you got Jeremiah Cobb out of Catholic. Darnell Robinson, the kid out of UConn, Alvin Robinson out of Elba. Think about
Henderson.
that. Henderson. Okay.
Yeah.
Henderson. I thought he was from Elba, Alabama, Henderson High School.
Sir?
Wasn't he from Elba, Alabama,
Yeah,
Charles
no.
Henderson High School? Yeah. Well,
You said
that's where Napoleon was exiled to the Isle of Elba. I just wanted to throw that in. You remember Napoleon? He was the
me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't know him.
From history class.
Yes, from history. Yeah. But all right, look at those 4 running backs right there. And I want your thoughts about the running game, because had Auburn used the running game more wisely last year, I see 3 more wins. And then I want to get Ronnie to respond after you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little higher on Damari Alston than I think most are. I've got a lot of confidence in him. I'm expecting a bigger year out of Jeremiah Cobb. I mean, he was top 6 running back coming out of high school, and we really haven't gotten to see a ton of him. And then Darrell Robinson, I think, will touch a little bit of the field. He'll be more of the power back. He's a bigger back. But, I mean, I think he'll be more of a project type of player. But we're such an RPO team. I mean, an extension of the run game is the RPO. So I think with guys like Malcolm Simmons, if we can get them the ball fast, I mean, you turn a little 3-yard bubble screen he can turn it into 15 yards. So, I mean, when we're talking about the run game, I think RPO is something you need to talk about a little bit more, because it's an extension of the run game.
Right. Yeah. Great point.
I think it'll be running back by committee. The kid from UConn, I've actually heard really, really good things about him. I think he may get more playing time than people expect. But I think overall it'll be running back by committee, and the guy that is most productive will get the most carries. And it'll also be, the smaller backs, you can use those guys in different ways. But I think overall it'll be, okay, who performs best, and that'll be the guy we go with on the first team, and he'll get the majority of the carries, and then you go down from there.
Doug Dean, part of our team here, he's out today, wrote in the dose that when Darrell Robinson was at UConn, he was hurt most of his first 2 years there. And he's part of that St. Francis Academy pipeline from Baltimore. There's 4 or 5 kids on the team at Auburn. Thank you, DJ Durkin. Wasn't DJ on the staff at Florida briefly?
He was there, I believe, under Urban Meyer and under Muschamp.
Okay.
And so he was a holdover, and Will kept him, and really, and Will thinks the world of him, thinks he's terrific. And I'll tell you a story. I was at, and Dan Quinn was actually the defensive coordinator. He's the head coach of the Redskins now, or I'm sorry, the Commanders. But he was the defensive coordinator at Florida, and I believe Durkin was the linebackers coach.
Yeah.
But Ron Zook and I, this is when I was living in Orlando, and Muschamp was the head coach at Florida. Zook called me and he said, "Hey, let's go to practice." And neither one of us had been back since we all got fired. So we, I drive up to Ocala, which is where he lived, and we end up and we ride to practice. And the thing that really stood out to me, we walked in the gates, and there were some guys that we knew when we were there, who were stabbing us in the back. And they walked up and acted like we were their long lost best friends. And I won't tell you what Ron said, but it was not pleasant. But we walk over, and I think they were doing kickoff or punt or something. And the 2 guys, nobody else, but the 2 guys that walked up to us and introduced themselves and said they appreciate us being there were Dan Quinn and DJ Durkin. Yeah. And so those guys really, really jumped out at me because of that. And look, I pay a lot of attention to Will Muschamp. If Will says a guy can coach, then he probably can. And he has great things to say about DJ. Yeah.
Will lived like 10 years of his life in Gainesville growing up. And then he obviously 4 years as the coach of Florida, because I think he's originally from Rome, Georgia. I don't know if he went to Darlington Prep or not, but I don't. Will Muschamp, absolutely one of the best defensive coaches. Boom, I love his nickname, Boom, and best recruiters around.
You know where he got that nickname, right?
No, tell me.
Well, I probably shouldn't. One of the games. I believe this is how he ended up with that nickname. But one of the games on TV, one of the Auburn players hit somebody really hard, and
Yeah.
you could hear him. You could hear him on the broadcast. Boom, fill in the blank.
Yeah. Yeah. I would still say one of the hardest hits I've ever seen was November 16th, 2004. Reggie Brown, a receiver for Georgia out of Carrollton, Georgia, was hit by Auburn safety Junior Rosegreen out of Fort Lauderdale Dillard High School. He laid there for 10 minutes. And a lot of people say that was the beginning of the end of the Auburn Georgia collegial cordial rivalry. I'm like, no, it was just a great hit, and it was clean. Junior, still, I've never seen a guy get 4 interceptions in one game. Oakley against Tennessee, 2004. You were not yet born, but he had 4 interceptions in that game. And Junior, I think Junior's one of the most under talked about, I'd say, guys in Auburn history. I mean, Oakley, you think who are the best Auburn players growing up that you can remember? Because I know you know this roster well, you know this program well, you know the history, the traditions, and the heroes.
Are you saying like that played when I was growing up, or even before?
Yeah, that you remember growing up?
I mean, Cam Newton was my first guy. I remember, and I was like 5, but that was the
Yeah.
first guy I ever remembered. Then we had 2 rough years. Then Nick Marshall, Sammy Coates, Trey Mason.
Yeah.
You've got a few mixed in. My personal favorite's Derek Brown.
Yeah.
I think he'll forever be my favorite.
Yeah.
Or Seth Williams. I like Seth Williams a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of greats. Carlton Davis, but those are just a few of the names that come to mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is like if you look at some programs, that list you just gave, they hadn't had that many guys like that in their history, Ronnie. You think about Carlton Davis out of Tampa. When Will Muschamp came up here, he brought 9 kids from Florida in 2015.
Yeah, Will has always been a terrific recruiter, always. And Oakley's talking about some of the guys that he remembers watching when he was growing up. When I was growing up, I still remember Andre Bruce in the Georgia Tech game. I believe it was against Georgia Tech.
Yes.
Andre Bruce and Tracy Rocker and David Rocker and on defense. And, I remember, I guess it was it third down in the 89 Iron Bowl on the opening drive. And I think they handed the ball off 2 consecutive times, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong, Rob. Handed the ball off 2 consecutive times, and then on the third one, they had scripted. The plays were scripted. I think they scripted the first 10 plays, and they called the go route to Alexander Wright.
Yeah.
And I think Dye about lost his mind. And he hit him going down that left sideline, and the place erupted. But I remember all those guys, Reggie Slack and Jeff Berger and Bo Jackson. I was a little bit before. I was really young when that was going on, but it was there've been a lot of great players come through Auburn.
Yeah, and you think about James Joseph, Bo Peep out of Phoenix City Central, played 7 years in the NFL, and there was you think about right now where Auburn is, and this is what's so. To me, it gives me so much hope. And I know Auburn will fix itself. But you've got 90,000 at every game. Oakley, 60,000, outside the game, tailgating, the white tents. That's now, there are a lot of people that they have no intention of going inside the stadium. But they're going to be tailgating out there with all those flat screens and eating all that good food, drinking cold beer, boiled peanuts, good whiskey. I mean, it's the atmosphere on game day is off the charts. I mean, I go over to 715 West Magnolia to the Sigma Newhouse. There's 1,500, 2,000 people there. And you're eating a lot of food. That college football is only going to get bigger. And the people that say we've ruined the game, I don't think they go to enough games. And all these, remember the predictions, guys, back 5-6 years ago during the pandemic? Well, now people are going to realize they can stay home and sit in their man cave with their 84-inch TV and drink beer and don't have to deal with the crowds. We're social animals. that'll get old real fast. And if you're sitting there drinking alone every Saturday, there's the 800 number probably out there. You can get some help. Go to a campus. You can't beat the environment. Oh.
Well, I think Auburn is kind of special in that regard because I don't think there's not too many teams like we talked about Brian Harsin in 2023 where you're 3-6, you're playing another 3-6 Texas A&M team and you're selling the place out. There's not many places like that. And like we talk about all these top crowds, like, yeah, everyone can have a good crowd when it's a top 10 matchup. But what about when your program's in the gutter? Are your fans still going to show up? And we've seen that over the last 5 years for Auburn, and we're showing up constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you're right. 100%, and I've been to a lot of places, been to a lot of games at different places. And, the environment, I'll say this, and I'm not saying this because I worked at all three places, but from a game day in stadium environment, Florida, when they're really good, it's hard to get better. Now outside, the one thing I was really surprised about at Florida was the pregame tailgating, before the game and after the game. I really wasn't impressed with that. Now the inside, when you get into the stadium, I mean, the fans are close to the field. It is a loud ass place.
Yeah.
LSU pregame, that's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah.
You're walking around and they're handing out whiskey and they're jambalaya and, you name it. It's a really, really neat environment. But overall, if you're losing at those places, they're not selling it out. And that goes for almost anywhere. Auburn is unique in that sense. The fans are going to show up and show out.
Yeah. And I think that's, just a few years ago, we talk about football right now. The crowds are way better than 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It's not even close. All right. So looking at Auburn this year, you look in the SEC, I've seen Auburn picked 7th, 8th, 9th in the conference. All right. Texas, I mean, they got to replace 4 starters on the offensive line. Okay. Georgia, we don't know what Gunnar Stockton can do. Oakley, I'm going to throw this one at you. Quarterback-wise, Jackson Arnold, recency bias. Everybody remember last year at Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel leaves. He comes in. All 5 offensive linemen are gone. They hit the door. Top 6 wide receivers, gone. Now, if you're the starting quarterback, how much confidence does that give you going into your first year in the SEC?
Yeah, when you've got so much turnover and all these guys leaving, that kind of – I think if you're not a confident guy already, then I think that can really wobble your confidence. But I do think that's one of the – if you don't have confidence in yourself, no one is. And at the quarterback position, if you don't have confidence in yourself, how are you supposed to instill that in your team? So, I mean, if he doesn't have it, it'll never click for him. That's one thing I'm hoping he does have. I mean, I don't know him personally. I don't know where his head is at, but I think that's one thing the staff's banking on, and that really as fans we need to bank on, is that he can build confidence not only in himself but in the rest of the team.
Now that's your homework assignment. One of them, Oak, is to get him over to the Sigma Newhouse, not before the game, please. No drinking before the game, except against Ball State. No, I'm kidding. But I would really, Ronnie, again, you don't get to be the number 4 quarterback in the country, number 10 overall player, all that, unless there's something really special about you. Let's go back to what he just said. If you're not confident, how's anybody around you going to be confident? It's like if the pilot gets scared and has a panic attack because, you're going through a thunderstorm at 40,000 feet, watch out below.
Well, there's no question, and I've talked to some of the coaches at Oklahoma. They feel like they got better with the kid that they signed from Washington State. Now, what does that mean? I'm not sure. Does it mean anything? I mean, Jeremy Johnson, we remember him. I mean, he was a special player. We thought
he was very special.
He was special, all right. I think he was a great kid, but he
fine young man.
Yeah, but he wasn't what was expected at quarterback. So, but I think the difference now is that if you look at Auburn's roster in the past few years, I mean, there wasn't a lot to choose from. I mean, if Jackson Arnold doesn't work, then Deuce Knight's right behind it. Now, I don't know if people are looking at Auburn undercover, but I mean, the way that Deuce Knight has bought into the program, bought into the coaching staff, bought into recruiting, he's actively recruiting all these kids. He is extremely involved, and so he's recruiting for a championship because he wants to play for one, and he plans on winning one when he's at Auburn. That's leadership. And I'm not saying that Jackson Arnold isn't those things. But I know that from my standpoint, um, you know, Deuce Knight has really jumped out at me as a guy who is a leader. And again, Jackson Arnold may be that guy. We'll see. I think he's really, really talented. It's pretty clear he's gonna be the starter going into Baylor. So, we'll see. But I think the quarterback room at Auburn is better than it's been in a long, long time.
I know defensive line. There's a lot of talent on there. You've probably seen Keldrick Falk on campus. 6'6", 285. Man, is he put together? I mean, he's just from Highland Home. You know what Highland Home has, don't you? That's where the Hyundai plant is, where they make the Hyundais.
Okay.
And Kia, of course, in West Point, Georgia, on the other side, Auburn in between. But you think about that defensive front for Auburn. People always talk about depth. You're 2 and 3 deep on your front seven. Auburn's got talent, not lots of veteran experience on the defensive line. How important is it that these guys are ahead of schedule in terms of their development?
Well, I think we've recruited defensive line particularly well the last 2 years. I think when you got the head of the state, Keldrick Falk, he's projected to be a top 10 pick. Malik Blockton was way ahead of schedule. Great player for us last year. I think it's anticipated he's going to take another jump. You've got Kerryon Crawford coming off the edge. He's built senior transfer 2 years ago. And I think if you can get one or two more guys to step up, maybe we got 2 transfers and maybe one of the freshmen, or Amarius Williams, if he could take that next step, because he's got a college-ready body. So, I mean, if you can get one or two more guys, I think I'm confident in that room. And really, I think on the edge, pass rush would be my biggest concern. But, I mean, if you can get one of these guys to step up and rush the passer well, then we're going to have a great D-line.
Yeah, Kerryon Crawford out of Briarcrest High School in Memphis, where Hugh Freeze used to be the head football coach. And another Memphian, Too Tall Miller, offensive tackle, Wooddale High School in Memphis. How many Nashville guys we got starting for Auburn this year, Oakley? There were 9 kids. Any. Well, but now I was going to say, here's my point. Tuberville had 9 kids, one from CPA, Christ Presbyterian Academy, a bunch from Brentwood Academy. There were every one of the kids he recruited down there all started at Auburn. John Vaughn, field goal kicker, Cody Bliss, the punter. Remember those guys, Ronnie?
Yeah, absolutely. And one point I wanted to make, on the other topic was, winning is also going to help hold this roster together. Yeah. And, Auburn finishes 6-6, 5-7 again. And I don't want to put any undue pressure on Hugh Freeze. I think he's going to get 4 years, and I think Auburn's going to have a really good season this year. Yeah. But if the wheels come off for whatever reason, and there's 3 consecutive losing seasons, it's going to get very, very hot. And it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to hold a roster together. 5 straight losing seasons, it's going to be hard. So Freeze needs to win. Not only Auburn people expect it, but he needs to win for himself, and he needs to win for the long-term health of the program, because with the transfer portal, these kids are not going to hang around.
I think you need at least 8 wins for to kind of not have a max exodus. And I'm personally hoping for around 9-4, whether that's 9-3, you lose the bowl game, 8-4, you win the bowl game. That's what I think I would be happy with. I think that should be the fans' expectation. If it's more, then great. If it's less, it's probably starting time to worry.
All right, so you've got to get one of the 2, Georgia and Alabama, because, again, Auburn in this century, let's go through the SEC. People that play Alabama every year. See how many of them have beaten Alabama 11 of the last 25 years. I mean, Auburn expects to beat Alabama, except when they go to Tuscaloosa. I don't know what happens. They stop and get a lobotomy on 82. I don't know what happens, but they don't play worth a flip up there. I want to ask you about Malik Autry, Ronnie. This kid is from Opelika, 6'6", 340. I don't know what he weighs. He is a 5-star recruit. He's big time. With offensive line play, I'm gonna throw this one to you, Ronnie, and then to Oakley. It's all these guys are coming in for spring practice and leaving in the transfer portal. They're not getting that 2-year, development period. Don't you think it's likely that freshman defensive lineman, a true freshman, can come in and make a big impact earlier than they used to?
I don't think there's any question. But I also think that it's dependent on the kid. If you look at the quarterback position, the kid used to have to be on the roster at least 2 years before he, and it's just a different animal now. You look at the way these kids are developing. My son, I see him walking around the high school and I see kids in the same grade, and he's a little bitty guy. And I see these big, these kids. I'm like, well, that dude's got to play football or got to play basketball, and I don't, but they're working out younger. These kids are lifting when they're 12 years old or younger. They're, hey, I've got half my house is taking creatine right now, and so it's a different world. I think the first time I ever knew what creatine was, I was 27, so, and they're drinking protein shakes, so it's a completely different world. And it's not just nice kitty cat.
Matt the cat about to grab the toggle switch.
but yeah, Rob, I think you're 100% right. I think up front, I think anywhere on the roster, young guys can come in and play if, body wise, are they ready? Can they digest the playbook? Do you have a good teacher at those positions? All those things.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're seeing more people having the ability to play early is because sports aren't a 3 or 4 month thing anymore. If you play a sport, you're doing that year round. You have to have a trainer. If you're getting recruited, you're going to camps year round. Like, you're really developing your body and focusing on your skills year round. You can't really play more than, if you're trying to get recruited, you're 1 to 2 sports. That's all you can play. You don't see a lot of 3-sport athletes anymore.
Well, and
and I don't think that's
the other thing, guys, and Oakley, you make a great point. These guys are in the weight room. They're with their, they're with the strength coaches. That's the reason, a lot of people, your strength coach is very well could be your most important hire. That guy spends more time with your team than anybody else. The strength coaches do. And so, when I was working in football, we had voluntary workouts, and several years before that, kids went home for the summer. And our kids didn't go home for the summer. They most of them stayed all summer and worked out and did the things you got to do to get ready for the season. But we used to tell our players, hey, you got voluntary mandatory workouts, and it's not mandatory you stay, but it's also not mandatory you play. And so I think we had pretty much everybody stay. In fact, I mean, everybody stayed. I know they did. We had one guy in particular. We were at Florida 3 years. I won't drop any names, but we had one kid in particular we inherited from Spurrier. And then he stayed on for 2 more years with Urban Meyer. He was there for, I guess he was there for 5 years. But so he stayed 1 more year with Urban. Never made the 105. You got 85 scholarships. He never came to camp. That's how he never made it to camp in the 5 years he was there, which is pretty telling.
Wow. Well, all right. I want to ask now about the linebacker position at Auburn. I'm going to throw 3 names out there. Oak to Ronnie. Okay, Robert Woodyard out of Mobile. He was a big get for Auburn a few years ago. He's stayed there. He hadn't left. Another one, he's really an intriguing guy, 5'11", about 225, out of Clay Chalkville up there, DJ Barber, hell of a linebacker. I mean, he's just one of these guys that you pull for. And then DeMarcus Riddick out of Clanton, Alabama, Chilton County, by the way, the peach capital of Alabama. Giant peach right there on Interstate 65.
Just bought some of those.
Yeah, you cannot beat fresh peaches. That's where Shug used to go shop over there in Chilton County. I Oak don't linebacker. It's so important, especially when you've got really good defensive linemen in a gap defense. I mean, it's critical. Talk about
Well,
that.
I think DeMarcus Riddick is. I mean, he was one of the recruits that one of Hugh Freeze's first big gets right there, along with Perry Thompson, and he's one of the most talented linebackers we've probably had at Auburn, like on a pure talent base. And I mean, he's got the tools. I mean, you don't play for linebacker in the SEC as a true freshman if you're not ultra talented. Yeah. And then Robert Woodyard. I mean, he's going to take Darian Mossy, if I'm saying his name right. His role, middle linebacker. He was our biggest get. He was like ranked 150th. Kind of tells you how bad Brian Arson's classes were. And then another name you didn't mention is Elijah Melendez. I think DJ Durkin is big on him, and I think as a scheme fit, he's perfect. And that was maybe one of his biggest gets was flipping Elijah Melendez from Miami.
Yeah, that was you're right, Ronnie. That was good, great point.
Yeah, and I think, back to our former conversation, former topic, guys that younger guys stepping up and playing. One thing that's happened is for Auburn in particular, the roster was so bad when Freeze got here. Though young guys had to play. And so some of your sophomores coming in are really, they've got the experience of juniors in past years. And so those guys got a ton of playing time. And so you're going to see, I believe, big jumps in some of the production for a lot of guys across the roster. I mean, Cam Coleman had a great year, but what can he really do in his sophomore year? What can he do in his junior year? So I think you're going to see guys really, really step up and I think you're going to have some guys step up and have great years.
Well, you think about Caleb Harris. Wasn't he one of the kids out of Thompson and Alabaster? This secondary. And Oakley, tell me if I'm crazy. Well, I am. But if you don't have good pass rush or adequate pass rush, your secondary, you don't want your strong safety with 98 tackles 10 games into the season. But I think Auburn's secondary, Kalen Lee, Caleb Harris, there's I mean, I'm not going to throw all the names out there. I'm just trying to throw a few. They are really talented.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of young players. Jay Crawford in particular I think he's an NFL guy. And I mean, your best player in your secondary is your pass rush. So, I mean, the D-line can if you have your guys coming out there for 5 seconds, I mean, you're going to have a quote-unquote bad secondary, but your D-line has a huge impact on helping out your secondary and kind of – I mean, we've got the guys. We brought in Rayon Strader, who a lot of people are high on. Ronnie maybe could talk about him a little bit. I don't know. I haven't heard much, but he was a highly touted transfer out of the portal. So interested to see how that dynamic works between him, Jay Crawford, and Kalen Lee in the cornerback room.
Yeah, I think that the Auburn staff has done a really good job of picking up transfers and plugging holes. I also think they've done a really good job of developing younger guys. And a lot of that has to do with they played early. The guys that could play early played early. But from everything that I can gather, the offseason workouts have gone well. The coaches are really impressed. Jackson Arnold's been great. Deuce Knight's been great. The running backs have stepped up. They got a lot of really, really good players on the roster. So, and again, a lot of this stuff is chemistry. If you look back, at 1993, the year before, I believe Auburn was 5-6 or, and
yep.
And so
5-5-1.
5-5-1. And so, and next thing you know, 11-0. You look at 2004, 2003, Auburn was supposed to be really good. And 2003 team was probably more talented than the 2004 team. I don't think there's any question. But it was a disaster. And then you look at, the 2010 team without Cam Newton probably goes 8-5. So, and then you look at 2013, Auburn was terrible in 2012, has the worst season in forever, and then turns around
62 years,
62 years, and turns around and wins the conference, plays for a national championship. So I don't think it's out of and for Auburn in particular, more so than pretty much any school in the country. you talk about bipolar. It's up and down and it's up and down. And so I think there's if the team gels early, and you have some of those big games in Jordan-Hare Stadium against Georgia and against Alabama and some of the other teams you play, that energy, those things feed off themselves. And so, we had Terry Bowden on the podcast not too long ago, and he said, I start looking at the schedule, and, Florida's ranked number one in the country, and we go down and we beat them, or they come to Jordan-Hare and we beat them. And he's like, I start looking at the rest of the schedule. He's like, there's nobody we can't. This is 93. We look around and he's like, hey, there's nobody we can't beat. And if your team has that kind of confidence and your quarterback's playing well, a lot of good things can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just got a couple of minutes left, and I think both of y'all are killing it on this stuff too. And also you've got Champ Anthony. Isn't he back healthy this year? Oh.
Yeah. I mean, he went down 4 games into the season, I believe. So I'm not sure if he's anticipated to be back for week 1 at full strength or not, but I think he'll be available this year. But back to what Ronnie was talking about, we're talking about the talent on this roster. We had the number 29 player in the portal come in this year in Horatio Fields, and no one's even talking about him. So that kind of at the wide receiver position, which Auburn historically hadn't been great.
Wake Forest.
No one's talking about him. Yeah. So that kind of shows you how talented this roster is, and it's kind of hopefully the beginning of new beginnings at Auburn.
Well, the roster, the receiver room is, it's one of the deepest in the country, and probably in the top 3, 4, 5 in the country. If you look at the guys that are in that room from a potential standpoint, it's really, really good. And then you look at all the other things that are going on at Auburn from an alignment standpoint, from a facility standpoint. Auburn's right there, and it's just a matter of it's time to cash the checks now.
It is, man. This is a great show today. Oakley McFerrin, you got your Twitter handle now. And what is that again?
Oakley McFerrin 6 on Twitter.
There you go. If you can spell, you can put Oakley McFerrin 6. There we go. All right. And Ronnie Sanders, the content, 97.2 million page views at the AU Undercover website last year. I'm thinking Auburn starts winning big. It tops 100 real fast. I'll bet you a sack full of crystals on that one. So it'll be big. But next week we'll get into the preview of South Alabama. But I like this. I love this discussion, man, because football magazines are out. Robert Woodyard's waited his time, but you're right. And Jason Caldwell told me this about DeMarcus Riddick. He played a lot of safety his senior year, not just pure linebacker. A guy that did that, made a hell of a conversion from safety to linebacker, Carlos Dansby out of Woodlawn in Birmingham, 16-year NFL player. Chiswick told me, he goes, I think you ought to play that. That's your money position. You can have a 10-year career. And he goes, I'll get back to you. A couple of days later, he goes, yeah, I'll play linebacker. Hey, for executive producer Brendan Martin, Ronnie, say something about a great show. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And stay tuned to this channel. A lot more great stuff coming. But, Ronnie, you had something to say.
Yeah, I'll tell a story real quick. I remember Brother Oliver telling me, Andrew Zhao, you guys remember him playing at Alabama, played quarterback at Alabama. And he tried to recruit Andrew Zhao to come to the other side of the ball. He's like, and he told him, he said, if you'll, and this is Brother telling the story. He said, if you come over to defense and play DB for me, you'll play 10 years in the league or longer. He said, if you stay at quarterback, you're not going to play in the NFL. And there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. See y'all tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Great stuff as always, man. It's getting closer. 71 days from kickoff in Waco. So I'll do it. So, Brendan, thank you as always. And thanks everybody for watching, and share this show and everything like that with all of your friends, family, and neighbors. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
You bet. We're still live, and we are wrapping it up here. Okay. Here we go.